addiction, Jim Herbert.
My name is Jim, and I'm an addict. It's true. Everything I've ever loved or loved to do in this lifetime, I've become addicted to at some level. And it all starts so innocently, with an ice cream cone from your grandma, or a bag of M&Ms from your grandfather, and then bam, you're addicted to sugar, right? And then, the opportunities for addiction, they continue to present themselves throughout your life, don't they, my friends? I need to look no further than into my own life to see how many dances I've done with addictions. Anybody else out here danced with an addiction or two in their lifetime? Yeah. I look inside my own life and I see smoking, yoga, running, martial arts, wine drinking, bonsai cultivation, kite flying, cocaine, meditation. That's right, I did say it. Hey, it was the 80s. Everybody was doing it. Meditating? The funny thing about addictions, though, is people want to classify their addictions. They want to tell you about their healthy addictions and their unhealthy addictions, as if they can put them on two different sides of the ledger and explain them away. But the fact of the matter is, they're still addictions. Has anybody out here ever watched one of those spelling bees on TV before? I think they put them on like ESPN 17 or something like that. Here's one of those scenes from one of those spelling bees. Addiction. Addiction is a medical condition that is characterized by compulsive engagement in rewarding stimuli despite adverse consequences. Addiction. Adverse consequences. Now you may be sitting there thinking, what in the world could the adverse consequences be of yoga, or running, or meditation? And we'll get to that in a minute. But before we do, I want your help. I'm going to ask you to help me walk through some of my dances with addictions in my lifetime and figure out if they're healthy or unhealthy addictions. We'll start at the top here with yoga. Just shout it out. Healthy or unhealthy addiction?
Healthy.
Healthy. Yes. Smoking.
Unhealthy.
That's a no-brainer, right? Running.
Unhealthy.
Oh, it depends. We can get into that in a little bit. I'm going to call it healthy when you get to run through scenes like this. Wine drinking.
Healthy.
I can make that argument too, but if you're going to wind up looking like this guy, I'm going to go with unhealthy. Martial arts. Kim, lifetime addiction, very healthy, right? Amazing. Gambling, blackjack. Oh, I used to love to play blackjack. Unhealthy? Consensus? Yeah. Bonsai cultivation. It's a Zen activity, right? Healthy or unhealthy?
Boring.
Boring? I love it. What are you talking about? Public speaking. Is that a healthy addiction, folks? Awesome. Tim, thank you for jumping in. Kite flying. Even if you're Charlie Brown, it's pretty zen. I'm going to say that's a healthy addiction. Cocaine. Healthy or unhealthy? Yeah, that's an easy one. Meditation. Healthy addiction, yeah. So, the thing about having an addictive personality type is every day is like walking on the edge of a razor blade. So if you're like me, every day is like walking on the edge of this razor, and on one side, you've got some self-control, and you can live a life of balance and purpose, and on the other side, you give in to your need for immediate gratification, and you are at least partially, and in some cases completely, out of control. And I've lived too many days on the wrong side of that razor blade in my lifetime. Now, I just introduced a word, control, self-control. And this is a word that sits powerfully in my mind, because I've gotten up here in other places and talked a lot in the last 2 years about surrendering control. See, I'm a bit of a control freak and have been in my life. And I've talked a lot more about letting go and going with the current in your life. So how can I put together these two seemingly incongruous ideas of maintaining control, yet going with the current? And the answer is, I can't. I don't know the answer yet. But I'm confident that I will get to the answer at some point, maybe even a little bit by the end of this speech. So what I want to do next is I want to go through and I want to look at some of what we just classified as unhealthy addictions and look and see how they played out in the lives of some people that I happen to know and see if we might not just stand this whole thing right on its head. I knew a girl named Kathy, and Kathy loved to smoke. And Kathy loved to smoke so much she always had a pack of Marlboro Light 100 cigarettes with her. And she kept it in her top drawer of her dresser in her bedroom. And every night at the end of the day, she would go there, take a clean ashtray, light one cigarette, sit at the end of her bed, put it out, clean the ashtray, and go to bed. And she wouldn't smoke again until bedtime the next night. Relative degree of self-control, yes? I'd say not such an unhealthy addiction. I have a friend named Jalal. He's 89 years old. He still works full-time in the wine business. In fact, he works right over there at the Binny's on Wellington and Clark, if you've ever been there. He's from Turkey. I had the privilege of working with him for 15 years. Jalal sold wine for 60 years in Chicago now. And Jalal loves wine more than anybody I've ever met in my life. And every day, if he chooses to drink, he allows himself one glass. And I've been at dinners with Jalal that lasted 4 hours. And he'd make a glass of wine last 4 hours as he wove stories about his life and the people he'd known. Is that a healthy or unhealthy addiction? Pretty healthy, right? Our idea of drugs in this country are so messed up. Pharmaceutical companies spend billions of dollars to manufacture drugs to give you that keep you sick. And then they manufacture other drugs to give you to offset the side effects of those drugs that they give you to keep you sick while they're making their hundreds of billions of dollars. Yet the FDA considers plant medicines like marijuana, ayahuasca from the gabi root, and coca to be illegal and harmful. Yet in South America, Peruvian shaman, and in the Andes mountain, the Andes Indians, they use cocaine regularly to regulate the amount of oxygen their blood can process at higher level elevations. And they use ayahuasca to get into states of consciousness where they're not attached to the material things in their life and they can commune with the divine at a higher level. Is that an unhealthy addiction? Not so much. Now, I want to take a second and reverse and do a different exercise. I want to take a look at some of the things that we labeled healthy addictions in my life and see how those played out for me. I wasn't much of a runner when I was growing up, but about 27 or 28 years old, I really got into running. And you see, I wasn't just a guy who could go out and run. I had to go out and keep track of how much I ran. And then I had to run a 5K, and then a 10K, and then a half marathon, and then a marathon, and then I did triathlons, and I did an Ironman. And the whole while I would keep track of everything, and how much I ran, and what I ate before I ran, and what I weighed after I ran. And I'd run so much that I'd have broken bones in my feet, but I wouldn't stop running because I had to be better than I was before. Healthy or unhealthy? Unhealthy, right? Martial arts. I got into martial arts when I was about 30. And I was obsessed for the first 3 or 4 years. I was obsessed so much that I would train every morning and every night in lieu of going home to be with my family. And sometimes I'd go train at lunch for 2 hours, and I'd lie to my boss about what I was doing so I could continue to train. I just couldn't let go of it. I'd say I had a rather unhealthy addiction to martial arts at that point. Meditation. How is it that I can turn meditation into an unhealthy addiction? Trust me, folks, Jim Herbert can overdo anything. When I was about 32, I got a meditation coach. She was the most powerful spiritual person I've worked with in my lifetime, until recently. And she told me that she thought I was one of the few people she'd ever met that could be in a state of meditation 24/7. And I thought it was a compliment. So I decided I was going to be the most Zen meditator in all of Chicagoland, maybe the world. And I got so deep into my meditation practice that I couldn't communicate with people. In fact, my wife and I might have gone 6 months without even talking because I was too busy trying to get Zen. not such a healthy addiction. So it really comes down to which side of the razor blade you can stay on, doesn't it? So as I was putting all this into my brain and processing it, I asked myself this question: are there any purely healthy addictions out there? Because if you're going to admit that you're an addict, and you have an addictive personality like me, you'd like to figure out if there's something that's truly healthy. Is there something out there that you can completely surrender yourself to that will serve you for the rest of your life, and maybe lifetimes going forward? So I pondered this question, and I realized that the answer started to come to me about 10 years ago. On March 17, 2006, a young lady named Christiana Slaybaugh walked into my place of employment wearing a green sweater to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, and she applied for a job. And at that point, I was living as a shell of a human being. I lived in a state of horrible self-loathing. And despite my outwardly arrogant, self-entitled alpha male appearance, I was wildly insecure and entirely lonely. And through some miracle of fate, this 22-year-old girl with limited experience got hired as a server in one of the best fine dining restaurants in the entire city of Chicago, with nothing to do with my work. And I'm so grateful that that happened, because Christiana was the first person that put a chink in my armor. She's the first person that cracked through and forced her way in and taught me the value of letting people into your life. And boy, when I dropped my shields, did the floodgates open up. New friendships were formed. Old friendships that I hadn't had in 10 to 15 years were rekindled. And I started a process of about 10 years of deep self-examination with some really good therapy and a lot of other modalities that I'm still in 10 years later. And along the way, I learned so much, and I met a lot of great mentors, the most important of which was a man named Richard Harsh. I met Richard 5 years ago, and Richard became my spiritual teacher. And there was something unusual about that first meeting with Richard. It was like we knew each other for lifetimes going forward. Have you ever met somebody in your life where the minute you met them, you had that moment where you were like, God, we must have lived former lives together, right? Anybody had that feeling in their life? See, the thing is that Richard had this deep love for me, and it almost made me uncomfortable at first. I thought there might be something unusual about Richard's love for me, but it wasn't anything unusual. It was just that Richard loved me without condition. And you see, I'd known unconditional love before because I had amazing parents, one of whom's still alive. Christiana's taught me so much about unconditional love. And then there's the grandparents. Anybody here happen to be a grandparent? Anybody? Everybody's got grandparents, right? Are grandparents the most beautiful, pure exemplification of unconditional love? I got to know all 4 of my grandparents in my lifetime, and I am so grateful for that opportunity. Well, Richard was really helping me a lot. He was my spiritual teacher. He was bringing me along as a human being. He even officiated the wedding ceremony of Christiana and I in the photo that I just had up on the screen a moment ago. And then he decided he was done in this lifetime, and he just went and died with no notice. With me at 10 o'clock in the morning at work, dead in bed at 6 p.m. that night. No explanation. They said it might have been a heart attack. They weren't sure. We never did an autopsy. His wife didn't want to know. Richard's death challenged me in ways that even my own father's death didn't challenge me. It set me into a place of self-loathing and anger at God. It set me into a place of fear. It set me into a place of self-doubt. Have you ever been there, fellow Toastmasters and friends? Has a life event ever caused you to question everything? Your belief in God, your belief in yourself, your divine purpose, your will to live? Well, Richard helped me see things in the world that I didn't really know how to see. And after a summer of discontent, and after a summer of spiritual wandering, I started to get awakened again. And through no small part, I got lucky enough to find an inspiration in a program called Infinite Possibilities in the fall of 2014. It's a program that my wife and I now teach regularly and travel and speak about with the author of the book, Mike Dooley. I've spoken about it many times here before. And you see, that opened my mind to the possibility that there was a deeper connection to the divine. And then later that fall, in November of 2014, on a morning at my cottage in Michigan, as I was sitting there writing in my journals, he came to me from the other side of the veil. Richard came to me as plain as he was sitting there at my kitchen table with me, and he gave me the name of a book that I was supposed to write. And then he went further, and he pointed out that most of the book was already written in my blog posts that I'd written in the last 3-4 months since he died, and in the journals that I'd yet unpublished about my feelings about his death. And then he went even further, and he told me that I'd be out there speaking about and talking about and teaching about the most important thing in the universe, and that he saw in me a thing that everybody wanted more of in their lifetimes. Same thing he told me when he was alive. So as I sit here in this moment and recognize that every event in my entire life has aligned exactly the way it was supposed to, and everything has happened with intention, the good and the bad, I realize that there is something out there for me to be addicted to. There is a healthy addiction, and it can serve me for the rest of this lifetime and every lifetime going forward. My name is Jim, and I'm addicted to love. Now, I understand that this is a healthy addiction, and I'm willing to sit in space and let that addiction grow. But there is a question that still resonates in my heart and in my mind, an awakening that I'm waiting to find still. And that question is this: if in living in a space of deeper self-love and having the desire to give and receive love more in my lifetime, will that allow me to transcend to a level where I too can give love without condition in every situation? Can I give love the way Richard gave love to me? The way that every great spiritual teacher has ever given love to their disciples? And it's a question that I wanted answered. I needed an awakening. And you know what? The awakening came. The awakening came in a challenge from the universe that's come in the last 10 days alone. Many of you have followed the story of a young woman named Kelly that has been a part of my life. I've spoken about it here, and if you haven't heard about it, here's a brief summary. About a year ago, I met a woman named Kelly living on the streets. And we started helping her out. We gave her some money so she could get some food. We helped her get a small room in a West Side house so she wouldn't be living on the streets. We helped her buy her meds. We helped her buy some food. And then we started a GoFundMe page so we could raise some money for her so she could start to take the reins of her life back. And you know what? Things were going really, really well. And then 10 days ago, I got an email from Kelly, and it started like this. Dear Jim, I don't even know how to start this email. But you see, you remember how I said there was something I wanted to talk to you and Christiana about? And we haven't had a chance? Well, that thing is that I have a daughter. And I couldn't say anything about it because I thought if anybody knew that there was a daughter involved in this chaos that is my life, that somebody would call DCFS. And it's not that I don't trust you, but I've lived a life where I really don't trust anyone. So I've reached a decision. I've been praying for enough money to come my way that my daughter, who's been living in a foster home for the last year and a half, could come and live with me, and we could leave Chicago and go to a place where we could be safe and happy and have a trailer and have enough money so I could get back on my feet and start working again and we wouldn't be apart. And I know this wasn't the outcome that you were expecting, but it's the decision that I made. I hope you won't hate me. Please let me know if you still want to be friends. And that email was a gut punch, I'll tell you, because I had an expectation of how this story was going to end. But I sat there and resonated with it for a little while. And then I realized that I had a chance to give Kelly the gift that she deserved and needed more than anything else in the world, something she'd never experienced before, to be loved unconditionally. And in doing so, not only could I give her that gift, but I could get a gift from my own by letting go. Have you ever heard it said that the ultimate act of love is to let go, and you'll always be connected? In letting go of the outcome of Kelly's story, I got the awakening that I'd always been looking for. So what is it in your life, fellow Toastmasters and friends? What is that one awakening? What is that pure addiction that you can go to that will help you live the rest of your life? I can't tell you what it is that you're supposed to surrender to, but I can tell you this. If you live a life where you give your love without condition, not only will your world be a better place to live, the entire world will be a better place to live. We're coming to the end of the age of Pisces in astrological terms. And the age of Pisces started just over 2,000 years ago. The sunrise on the vernal equinox comes in the constellation of Pisces since 0 AD. And how interesting that Pisces, the sign of the fish, was the sign of a great spiritual teacher at the dawn of the age of Pisces just over 2,000 years ago. So what's next on the astrological horizon, you're wondering? It's the age of Aquarius. We are at the dawning of the age of Aquarius in 2150 AD. And the sign astrologically for Aquarius is a water bearer, emptying a pitcher of water. I believe there's a symbol here also. I believe that symbol is that the pitcher of water is a flood that's ready to awaken humanity to joy and love. I invite you to come and stand with me in celebration as we await the joyful flood. And while you're waiting, may I suggest that you go out there and be the love that you wish to see in the universe.